Chapter 186. He's concerned about her pregnancy. Mia's anger mounted, but she controlled herself by walking away from the housekeeper before she'd do something she might regret. However, she took the house phone with her in case Neil would call back again. She hoped he would. When she entered her room, she walked to the open balcony and sat on the fluffy swing chair with the landline phone clutched to her chest, praying desperately that he'd call her back. In her entire life, she'd never wanted something or someone as desperately as she did Neil, and sometimes she thought it seemed unreal to want someone that badly. Even when he'd been accused of killing her mother, she'd never stopped wanting him. Her smartphone rang inside her pocket at that moment, startling her. She quickly grabbed for it, thinking it might be Neil who'd finally decided to call her main phone. "Hello? Hi, Mia." Rain's concerned voice came from the other side of the phone, drowning away Mia's momentary anticipation of hearing Neil's voice. "I dropped by Talkwave Productions, but your manager said you haven't showed up in 2 days. So I decided to check up on you. Is everything all right?" Mia raked her hand through her hair, trying to tell herself to act normal and reply to Rain rather than worry when Neil would call. "Yes, I'm fine. I've been feeling a bit under the weather lately," she said, tossing a glare at Sabrina, who'd suddenly decided to walk into her room at that moment again to clean up her already cleaned room. "Oh, that's normal in your condition. By the way, I called to ask if you are still interested in shopping for the dresses we plan to wear for my father's upcoming birthday. Can you manage? I mean, it's fine if you can't. Of course, I've already promised to go with you last week," she said, her eyes on Sabrina. She'd almost forgotten about her shopping plans with Rain because of her worry, and now the last thing on her mind was going out to shop and attending a birthday party next month, but then she knew she'd soon come around. Thus, she made another arrangement to go out with Rain the day after tomorrow. "Yay! We have a plan now. Don't you dare back out of it at the last minute, Mia. I want my father's birthday party to be grand, and I want my friend to be as beautiful as I am on the day. Take care of yourself and eat healthy for your baby." Rain scolded like a mother, and Mia couldn't help but silently wonder how her friend could act normal when she'd recently just gone through a heartbreak. Right at that moment, the landline Mia had clutched to her chest began to ring. I have to hang up now. Thanks for checking up on me. Love you," she said quickly and hung up the phone to pick up the landline, only to realize it wasn't Neil but some random stranger. She ended the call in frustration, then her eyes fell on Sabrina, and her anger mounted again. "Sabrina," she burst out in frustration, "I cleaned the room myself this morning. What are you doing cleaning it again?" "I'm sorry, Miss Mia. I didn't know. I will go and prepare lunch then." She bowed slightly and left the room. Mia took a deep breath to calm her nerves. Perhaps her pregnancy and her anticipation for Neil's call were starting to turn her into an overbearing person, but her housekeeper was starting to get under her skin lately. Mia didn't leave her room for the whole day and remained there with the landline clutched to her chest. She looked at the time on her phone and saw it was already 8:38 p.m. Just when she was about to give up on waiting for his calls, the landline rang again, and she quickly answered it, silently praying it was Neil. And it was. Neil's voice sounded even deeper and smoother on the phone, but it was cold, curt, and clipped. "Are you alone, Mia?" "Yes," she said, her smile slowly dropping at the tone of his voice. "Do you think it's funny for you to frustrate me like this by telling Liam you'd sleep with that asshole? I've told you we are not to be in contact until I'm free, yet you made me go through a lot to reach you 3 times. It wasn't what she wanted to hear from him. It wasn't the way she wanted him to talk to her after a month of being apart, but she concentrated on the words he'd sent to her in his message, refusing to let him trick or intimidate her with his voice. "If you don't want me trying to threaten you into contacting me anymore," she replied softly, "you can tell me that the things you sent in your message were all lies." "Fine," he said. "They were all lies," he clipped. Mia squeezed the phone in her hand and closed her eyes. "Now, tell me that you don't love me, darling, and I'd stop trying to reach you every minute." She heard him draw a ragged breath, and his voice dropped to a tortured plea as he whispered, "Don't make me say that. Please. I love you so much," Mia whispered fiercely. Neil felt his heart skip a beat at those words, and even though he was trying to make her see why he didn't want to keep contact with her for now, he couldn't stop his own body from reacting to those words. He felt a surge of warmth travel all the way from his heart to his groin. His heart and body longed for her, but he knew he couldn't keep torturing them both when they weren't in the same country at this moment. When Liam had told him what she'd said last night when he called him, He'd immediately reached for her house phone, which Liam had managed to get for him, but her annoying housekeeper had kept picking up and refusing to give the phone to Mia. He'd felt so mad he'd wanted to reach her house and fire the woman from the way she was speaking to him, but then he'd reminded himself to stay calm. He could torture himself by not being in contact with her until he was free, but he couldn't handle the thought of his woman being with another man, not to mention Owen, who'd now taken the top spot on the list of the most disliked people in Neil's life. "I want you, I love you, Neil," she whispered softly again, and Neil felt like he'd die of longing if she continued like this. "Don't do this to me, Mia." Mia's fingers loosened on the phone and she smiled because she suddenly sensed that she was going to win this battle. "I can't stop," she said tenderly. "I can't stop loving you. There's only one solution I'm willing to accept if you want me not to turn to another man and wait for you, or else you'd lose me forever." "Damn it, Mia, that's not." "Hush, darling," she whispered teasingly. "You don't expect me to keep waiting for you without communication, do you? If that's what you expect, then I guess you still have no idea how a relationship works. For a whole week on the mountains, you've never let me sleep alone, nor did you fail in making love to me. I've gotten used to having sex, and now you want me to live without it. Don't you think that's a bit unfair of you?" "Oh, Mia. Don't. God, don't." "Don't what?" she probed. He drew in a long, labored breath and was quiet for so long that she thought he wasn't going to reply, and when he finally answered, the words sounded as if they were being wrenched from his chest. "Don't ever stop loving me. Don't you dare replace me with another. I will do anything as long as you'd love me alone. I'll promise that when we meet again and I'm convinced enough that you want me," she said, hugging her pillow to her chest and suppressing a smile. Those words wrung a reluctant laugh from him, and the memory of his dazzling smile made her heart soar as he said, "Are we talking about marriage here?" "No, we are not." "Why?" He sounded so disgruntled that Mia wanted to laugh at the notion that he wanted to marry her when he'd not even courted her in a way she wanted before she'd decide to marry him. But then they'd gone ahead and made a baby without marriage, so it was only natural that he'd assumed their next step would be marriage once he got back. "You don't want to marry me?" he asked, his voice evident that he was displeased by that. He'd never thought about marriage in all of his life, but the thought that if he did not marry her as soon as he could, another man would beat him to it and he'd lose her forever because of his cowardice made him want to do that the moment he went back to Mirage Mesa as Xavier Galvera rather than Neil Weiner, the identity he'd been forced to take as a boy by his uncle. "Do you want to marry me?" she asked without answering his question. He declared with a solemn voice that made her heart skip 1,000 beats, "As long as it marks you as mine alone." "In that case, hurry up and come back home. Then we can talk about that," she said. "When are you coming back to Mirage Mesa?" There was another tortuous pause on the other side that strung her nerves to the breaking point. Then he began speaking, and she forgot everything but his words and the incredible feeling of elation sweeping through her as he spoke. "All right, I'll tell my men to hurry the process of my case before the month ends. Do you have anything else to say to me before I hang up?" Mia smiled at the realization that he had expected the call to end like this when he made it, because he'd obviously talked her out of her threat to sleep with another man. "One question. Why can't I meet you in whatever country you are right now while your name is being cleared? Because I don't want to risk anything when we've finally found a solution to get this over with." Mia accepted that, and he continued, "However, before that, I will stay in contact with you every Friday through this line until I'm back in Mirage Mesa. Make sure to keep that annoying housekeeper of yours away from the phone whenever I call." "You mean Sabrina?" Mia laughed softly at the sound of the dislike she heard in his voice. She could be nosy at times. He hummed softly. "How are you feeling?" he asked, no longer interested in speaking about the insignificant housekeeper. "I feel wonderful." "Are you sure?" "I did some research on pregnancy and learned how severe morning sickness could be." "I hope you don't suffer from morning sickness or anything like the things I saw online?" he asked, his smooth, husky voice laced with concern. "I have morning sickness. I suppose it's normal," she replied, twirling a strand of her hair. However, her response only heightened the worry of the father of her unborn child, as he proceeded to bombard her with numerous questions without pausing for her to respond. Having conducted his research on morning sickness via Google, he had discovered alarming information that caused him to worry excessively about her pregnancy. "When was your last checkup? What did the doctor say about your morning sickness? I read that 2% of women died from severe morning sickness, so don't take it lightly." I'll ask James to arrange for a professional pregnancy specialist to be your personal doctor until you give birth. You, relax, sweetheart, Mia said softly, suppressing a smile at the fact that he cared about her pregnancy enough to do research on it. Sometimes Google research on things can be exaggerating. Don't believe everything you read. I'm a very healthy woman. I think my body is made for motherhood. And it was definitely made for you. He swallowed audibly at the sexual reference. Tease me now, and you'll pay later, on your back in my bed. Chapter 187 Longing. He swallowed audibly at the sexual reference. Tease me now, and you'll pay later, on your back in my bed. Promise? She blushed like a high school girl who was talking dirty with her boyfriend on the phone for the first time. Neil laughed then, a throaty laugh that warmed her even more than his husky words had. I miss you. God, I miss you so much. He breathed in a way she wished they were in the same place right now. She squeezed her eyes closed. I know, I miss you too. Tell me about your day and what you've done the whole month we were apart. He said, not willing to end the call now that he'd finally gotten in contact with her. One thing was now for certain. Nothing on earth could keep him from marrying her and being a good father to their child. He would be the father he'd never had to his child, and he'd settle down finally and think of other things beyond his revenge and mission to destroy Doc Kroll. With a smile he didn't know he had on his face, he listened to Mia tell him about her days. But when it came to the part when she unintentionally told him about how Owen had hit her and tried to force himself on her, and how she'd lost her position at work because of her cut-off engagement with him, all smiles and humor vanished from Neil's face, and his temper rose to the point where Mia could feel the chills of his aura down her spine through the phone. That son of a bitch. He gritted through clenched teeth. Why didn't you tell Liam to tell me this sooner? If he'd known this sooner he'd have. What would he have done when he was still a fugitive? He wouldn't be able to break Owen's limbs and teach him the lesson he'd never forget for daring to touch his woman. Unless he rose back to the top and took back his spot as the top one most wealthy man in the country, he wouldn't be able to protect his woman and deal with the people who dared treat her badly, and because of that, he was more determined than ever to get back on track and take back his real identity. Mia could feel his anger through the phone, and she regretted telling him that part. She'd not meant to mention that part to him, but now that she had, she tried to play it cool. I didn't tell you sooner because I knew you'd get mad, and when Liam came to me, informing you about it was the least of my concerns, she explained, while curling up on her bed and pulling the blanket up to her chest. After a moment of reflection, Neil spoke once more. I will assign some men to accompany you wherever you go. I don't want that rapist approaching you when you are vulnerable. They will be with you at all times, and you must not venture out without them, he stated. However, Mia was hesitant to have men tailing her, especially since she had already obtained a restraining order against him. Therefore, she replied, I do not want bodyguards. Owen will not dare to come near me again. Besides, I prefer my solitude over being constantly monitored and drawing unwanted attention from onlookers. I cannot rest easy until I know you are completely safe. Apart from Owen, there are other reasons why I feel the need to assign bodyguards to you. Once our relationship becomes public, my enemies will target you to get to me. Mia, I cannot bear the thought of losing you or our unborn child now that I have found a reason to live and build a future, he expressed. They will not shadow you closely, but will keep a discreet distance. I want to prevent any mishaps. Please agree to this for you and our baby's safety. Mia sighed. Even though she wanted to argue with him on this, she could see where his worry was coming from. Thus she said, all right, fine, as long as I won't feel their presence. To distract both of them from the grim mood stealing over their sweet conversation, she asked, what are you doing now? Are you standing or sitting? I'm in a hotel room, sitting on a bed, talking to you, he whispered. Are you staying in the hotel? No. I got the room so I could call you and get a decent connection. The connection at the place I stay, in my yacht, is bad. I want to go to sleep tonight, seeing what you'll be seeing when you lie in bed. Describe your bedroom to me, and I'll tell you what mine looks like, so you'll know. She smiled as she hugged her pillow more tightly to her chest, imagining it to be Neil. Mia, he said gruffly, are you trying to drive me to new heights of frustrated sexual desire? She had no such intention, but the notion was satisfying. Can I do that? You know you can, she beamed in immense satisfaction. I didn't say anything but talk about bedrooms. Is that enough to turn you on? Just by talking to me about anything is enough to do that. She laughed then, as easily and as naturally as she'd been able to laugh with him from the beginning they'd met. And subconsciously, he smiled. "What size is it now?" he asked with a smile in his voice. "My bedroom? The baby bump," he said. She drew in a shaky breath. "It's not showing yet, my stomach is still as flat as a board. It's just a month old. I think there's still some time before it'll make its presence known." She blushed in pure joy at how natural their conversation was shifting from one topic to another. And subconsciously, she pressed a hand to her stomach while talking to him. "And what color is it?" she asked. "What? My stomach? No," she said with a chuckle, "your bedroom." "Smart ass," he chided, but he answered and his voice got deep. "It's on a yacht right now. Teak walls, a nightstand lamp with a picture of you I printed out from the net hanging on the wall. Is that what you see when you fall asleep?" "I don't sleep, Mia. I just think of you." "Do you like islands?" Mia drew in another shattered breath, trying to memorize each tender thing he said. "I love islands," she said, wishing she was there with him to help him sleep well, to take away his burden and nestle his head to her chest until he'd fall asleep. "What's your bedroom like?" he asked. "Purple walls, a purple bedspread, and a guitar across my bed. Then a picture of you on my nightstand." "Where did you get it from?" he asked, knowing there were no photos of him online unless it was from the ones taken when he was brought to court 5 years ago and was about to be sentenced to prison. "I was going through some of Ivy Grove's old articles when I came across a photo of you taken when you were dressed for that live event, so I cut it off and put it into a frame. There were no good photos of you on the net. You swiped an article from the university library and cut a picture of me out of it," he said, trying to sound shocked. "Certainly not. I paid for it before taking it." "Mia," he called softly after a moment of silence, "can you play me a song? I want to hear you sing for me." Mia hadn't played a song in a while after she played it in the orphanage, but then she was willing to do anything for Neil. Thus, she got off her bed and grabbed her guitar beside her bed. Crossing her leg and placing the guitar on her lap along with the phone on the bedside, she took a deep breath before asking, "What song do you want me to play?" "Longing," he replied without hesitation. "I miss the song that had once brought them together in their childhood and the song that reminded him of his late mother and how sweet she was." And sometimes, Mia reminded him of her. "Longing," she whispered with a smile, as that was her only favorite song since childhood, and it reminded her of something Neil had said in his message 2 days ago, but then she took a mental note to ask him of it once she finished playing the song. Mia's fingers gently caressed the strings of her guitar, coaxing forth the familiar melody of "Longing." Each note danced through the air like a delicate whisper, carrying with it a sense of nostalgia and comfort. As the melody unfolded, Neil felt a wave of tranquility wash over him, the strains of the music wrapping around his soul like a warm embrace. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the soothing rhythm, his mind drifting back to the time when he saw Mia sitting in the bar performance stage, playing and singing the song. The lyrics of "Longing" flowed from her lips like honey, her voice a gentle breeze carrying the weight of emotion. Each word resonated with the longing in Neil's heart, echoing the feeling of loss and yearning that he had buried deep within himself. Yet, amidst the melancholy melody, he found the peace he'd never had in the past few years and months. He leaned down and laid on the bed, facing the ceiling with his phone on his chest as it was on speaker. As he allowed himself to get lost in her beautiful voice and song, a memory flickered to life in his mind, the two of them, young and carefree, sitting beneath the shade of the old oak tree in their garden, their laughter mingling with the melody of the song. In that moment, Neil realized that no matter how far they may drift apart, the connection forged in their shared history would always remain. And so, enveloped in the melody of "Longing," Neil allowed himself to be carried away by the bittersweet symphony, finding his solace in the timeless embrace of the music and memories. Chapter 188. She betrayed him. Mia played the song to the end for Neil, and the silence on the other side of the phone almost led her to believe that he'd fallen asleep. But the moment she stopped playing, his husky voice flowed out from the other side, "Thanks." She smiled. "You're welcome," she replied, crawling back onto the bed. Then, after a few moments of silence, he spoke again. "Have you eaten?" Oops. She'd completely forgotten about dinner because she'd been busy waiting for his calls the whole day, and now that he asked, her stomach made an audible growling sound that she was certain he'd heard from the phone because of the silence that followed his question. She smiled awkwardly when she heard him sigh heavily. "How could you have missed your dinner?" he scolded. "It's almost 11 at night. and yet you've not eaten knowing you're eating for two. Mia, I'm going to hang up the call, and you're going to go down to your kitchen and make something to eat," he said strictly, not leaving any room for her to tell him how late it was to eat. "Don't hang up yet," she said quickly, desperate to keep talking to him. "We'd better hang up now. I need to take care of some things tonight before riding back to my yacht. We will talk another time. Are you going to promise me you'd eat?" She nodded, speechless with regret at the thought of letting him go. "I promise. It's time to say goodnight then. There's one more thing I need to say to you," he added quietly. "What is it?" "I meant every word I sent in that message," he said, still unable to say the words, "I love you," with his voice. He knew he did, but writing it to her was easier than saying it to her. He still had time to learn to say the word freely in the future without feeling like a fool, and he hoped she'd understand him, and she did understand. "I know you did." She sensed he wanted to hang up, and she added quickly, "Before you go, I want to ask you about how you plan to make someone else confess for the crimes." "Don't you think?" "Stay out of that, Mia," Neil warned her, his voice turning slightly icy. "And leave that to Liam, and don't interfere with any of it. I don't want you getting involved in any of this." "Why?" "Don't ask. If you have problems with any of the arrangements we are making, don't get involved. What we're doing is illegal, and I can't let you get involved beyond what you've already done." Mia suppressed a shiver at his ominous tone. "Say something sweet before you hang up." She wouldn't want their conversation to end like this without something sweet to remember for the whole days before they met again. "Something sweet," he repeated, his voice softening. "What did you have in mind?" he asked, not sure what he'd say that would sound sweet enough for her. Mia was a little hurt when he seemed unable to think of something, and then when she was about to tell him to let it be, he said with a smile in his husky voice, "I am going to bed in exactly 4 hours. Be there with me, and when you close your eyes, my arms will be around you." Her voice dropped to a shaky whisper. "I love that. They've been around you every night since we parted. Good night, sweetheart." "Good night," she whispered tenderly, and he hung up at the last minute. Mia put the phone down and stared at the ceiling dreamily, unknown to her that Sabrina had been standing outside the slightly ajar door, recording her entire call with Neil. She left the door the moment the call was over, and she sent the voice record to Owen with a satisfied smile. In the dimly lit room of the Sullivan villa, Owen sat by the window, the cold glow of the winter moon casting eerie shadows across his handsome, sharp features. A cigarette dangling between his fingers, forgotten, as his attention was consumed by the damning voice record Sabrina had sent him just now. As the recording played, his grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles turning white with rage. He couldn't hear Neil's voice, but he heard Mia's, and each word spoken by her felt like a stab to his pride, a betrayal that cut deeper than any blade he could ever wield. How could she choose Wayner over him, after everything he had sacrificed, after the years of dedication to make her his? Did she have any idea what he'd sacrificed to make her his, only for her to make a mockery out of his love by publicly announcing that she was no longer engaged to him and now speaking to the man he hated the most in the world like her lover? 5 years ago, because of his love for her, he had killed Alaric and Diane for her. He could still remember the day he'd discovered that the two had been the reason she'd gone through a hard time in Ivy Grove. He hadn't been able to tolerate the fact that they dared to poison her the day before the live event. The anger he'd felt that day was beyond describing. He'd gone after Alaric in the parking lot and ran into Neil, slamming his fist into the boy's face and warning him to stay out of Mia's way. Owen had been so mad that the bastard dared to go and punish his lover's offenders before him. Thus, when he killed Alaric and disfigured his face, he made sure to use his blood to write Neil's name on the windshield. Remembering the scene and the satisfaction he'd felt after he'd killed Alaric, his lips twitched slightly. Nobody has the right to touch his woman except him. And Diane Foster, that little bitch who dared bully his woman. Ha! She'd screamed like a trapped animal when he slowly slit her throat and stabbed both her eyes and disfigured her beautiful face. And just like Alaric, he'd used her blood to write Neil's name. And then Mia's mother. He'd gone to the apartment to talk to her about her daughter and get the woman to convince Mia to forgive him, but when he entered, someone had done her dirty. She was laying in a pool of her blood, almost dead and trying to say something. He'd wanted to call the ambulance. Perhaps if he'd called the ambulance immediately, she'd have survived, but then he realized there was no use of her in the world anyway. With Elizabeth alive, Mia would never run to him willingly, but without her, Mia would have no other family member but him. Thus, he'd sat there on the woman's bed and watched her slowly take her last dying breath. Then he'd stood up and cried his eyes out because she'd been like a mother to him throughout his entire life. She didn't deserve to die, but she had to, because only her death could make Mia run to him. He'd pressed a farewell kiss to her forehead and then used her blood to write Neil's name. He'd never felt so good committing a crime in his entire life like he felt when he did all that. He'd left the house and Whispering Way without leaving any traces behind. He'd done all of that to make Mia his, and yet she dared not appreciate his efforts and went behind his back to call Neil Wayner. He'd thought she wanted wealth, and because of her, he'd danced to Kelvin Rodrigo's tune, playing the loyal servant in pursuit of a big dream that was now achieved and useless in winning her over. He had amassed wealth, influence, all in the name of proving himself worthy of her love. And yet, in the end, it meant nothing to her. Fury surged within him, coursing through his veins like wildfire. How dare she betray him, after all he had done? How dare she cast aside his love for the fleeting embrace of another? How dare she love his enemy and splash mud to his face? With a primal roar of rage, Owen hurled his phone against the wall, the sound of shattering glass echoing through the room like a final, mocking laugh. But even as he stood amidst the wreckage, his heart heavy with betrayal, a twisted sense of superiority seethed within him. He was wealthier than Neil. He was a free man while Wayner was a fugitive. Neil Wayner had lost his grace while he was the second richest after Kelvin Rodrigo. He could do whatever he wants while Neil couldn't. Thus, he could still make Mia run to him again. He could still make her believe she only had him in the world. He could still make her dance to his tune. Did she think he'd give up after she'd cut off their engagement? Ha, not a chance. He was never born to be a loser. It was either she became his or no one else's. He would only allow her to be with that Wayner after his death, which would never happen in this lifetime. With those thoughts, Owen strode towards his nightstand and unboxed another brand new phone that had everything from his previous phone installed in it. He dialed a number and called it. When the person picked up, he asked, "Have you made all the arrangements?" The person replied to him, and a crooked smile graced his face. "Good. Make sure you make every single thing believable. Don't spare her until everyone despises her to the core. I want her to lose her job completely, her fame, turn her fans against her. Make her miserable until she has no one supporting her anymore," he said with a twisted grin. Then he added, "Continue to keep a close eye on Liam Thompson and his men to see what they are up to lately." Chapter 189 Bedtime Story. That same evening after Neil phoned Mia, he contacted the head of his bodyguards team and instructed them to monitor Mia's movements in the city closely, ensuring that Owen Sullivan and any unwanted people stayed away from her. He directed the team to safeguard her from a distance, as she had expressed her dislike for being followed around. He was determined to prevent any further incidents where Owen would attempt to harm or harass her. While he couldn't change the past incident, he was resolute in ensuring such occurrences never recurred again. Once things were in order, he planned to hold the bastard accountable for his actions towards his woman. Neil wasn't the kind of man to let things like that slide, and he intended to make certain Owen returned to his rightful place in the slum of Whispering Way. He regretted not being able to be by Mia's side, especially now that she was carrying their child and would need someone to monitor her eating habits and her health. The last thing he wanted was something bad to happen to her now that he'd finally accepted his feelings towards her. Despite his inclination to have her leave the country and go live with his grandma temporarily, he understood Mia wouldn't agree to that, thus he wasn't going to force her and would instead do his best to get back to her. After speaking with his security team, Neil immediately contacted Liam to inquire about their plan's progress. "We are still working on it," Liam responded. "We've taken the man into the underground cell to make him agree to the confession by threatening to kill his family. He's too loyal to his boss to agree to us, but worry not, I've thought of another way to make him agree. I heard he loves his wife so much, perhaps when he sees a sniper's laser sight targeting her head, he'll finally give in. Don't kill the innocent, but use any means necessary to get the confession from him before the end of this week. I need to get back home, Liam. Mia needs me. I can't bear to be away from her for more than a week." He said the words like they were being wrenched out of his heart, and Liam couldn't help but feel surprised yet again for the change in his friend. He recalled when Neil was first sentenced to prison, Liam had suggested this method 3 years ago, but Neil had refused, saying he'd find the main culprit. But now, because of a woman, he was willing to do anything to get out of it. "All right," Liam muttered, "I will hurry the process." Though it was easier said than done, if the man were to still refuse even after threatening him with the life of his wife, there was nothing else Liam could do. The man was a criminal, but that didn't mean he'd admit to a crime he didn't commit that easily. By the way, before I forget to mention, this morning my men noticed they were being tailed by an unidentified car. The vehicle has been shadowing their every move, as if someone is aware of our activities. I'd have suspected it to be Jason, but Jason has too much on his plate lately to worry about us. He's been busy trying to make connections with Max Everett by attending all of the Everett social gatherings in the city, he explained. However, upon reviewing the surveillance footage at Mirage Mesa, I observed that the car briefly stopped at the Rodrigo Enterprise. Upon hearing this, Neil muttered a curse under his breath. Kevin Rodrigo, that conniving old man. I've always suspected he was involved with Doc Kroll and my parents' deaths. What other misdeeds has he committed in my absence? Well, he has managed to sway most of Galvera's shareholders to his side. I did my best to oversee your company in addition to mine, but following my father's passing, I had to dedicate more time to the Thompson's Business Corporation. It's challenging at times, and during my last check, I discovered that Kevin Rodrigo has been attempting to drive Galvera Enterprise into bankruptcy by deceiving your investors about Xavier. While the public is unaware that you are Xavier, I believe Kevin is privy to this information. He is using the fact that you have not revealed your identity as Xavier to gain an advantage. Neil ran his fingers through his hair in frustration and took a deep breath to control the surge of rage that coursed through his veins. Kevin Rodrigo, that cunning son of a gun, would pay double the price if he discovered he was responsible for his parents' deaths and now attempting to ruin his company after failing to persuade Fabian to sell his share 5 years ago. Liam, you've done your best in assisting me, and I appreciate that. You can concentrate more on the Thompson's Business Corporation. James can oversee the Galvera Enterprise in the meantime until I return. Please say hello to your niece for me, Neil said upon hearing a child's voice on the other end of the phone before ending the call. Meanwhile, Liam sighed heavily as he heard his niece's loud voice ascending the stairs, calling his name even before reaching his room. Uncle Liam. She knocked at his door, and Liam was tempted to pretend he wasn't there, but he knew the little girl would persistently knock and call his name once she'd already seen his car parked outside. He couldn't fathom why his sister chose to keep her daughter and nanny at his house when she could take them to their other sister's place. He could already envision the little girl standing outside his door with her large teddy bear, awaiting a bedtime story, when all he desired was to rest. He was the only male son in the Thompson household before his stepbrother appeared, and he had 3 younger sisters, who were all married now, but their youngest sister had gotten pregnant and given birth to a child out of wedlock, and not knowing who the father was, she'd had no one to put the responsibility on but herself. And now that she was married, her husband refused to take responsibility for the little girl, Lily, who was now living with him temporarily. The reason he'd not sent Lily back to her mother's house was because he knew the little girl didn't even like her stepfather, who'd refused to acknowledge her as his after he married her mother. And besides, he liked the little girl in his house. The only thing he was finding hard to keep up with was her constant request for him to tell her a bedtime story. Uncle Liam. Lily's small voice interrupted his thoughts once more. Knowing she wouldn't give up, Liam relented. He walked to the door and opened it just as Lily was about to knock again. Her hands froze in midair as she saw him respond to her. Her dark, doll-like eyes gleamed with excitement as she smiled up at him. Uncle Liam, I knew you were inside. Can I sleep in your room tonight? She asked eagerly, darting past him before he could answer. She tossed her teddy bear onto the bed and settled in comfortably. Liam watched her with a disapproving expression, but she met his gaze with a cheerful look. Aunt Linda isn't here today, so I'll sleep in your room instead, she explained, mentioning one of the women he used to bring home to satisfy him. Liam was surprised that Lily knew Linda's name. How do you know about Linda? He inquired, feeling uneasy that Lily was aware of the women he used to bring home while she was supposed to be asleep in her own room. Despite usually taking his female companions to a hotel, he had brought Linda to his house a few times out of laziness, thinking Lily was asleep each time. It was clear that Lily was more observant than he had realized. Lily sulked and remarked, I talked to her when she went to the kitchen for water. She mentioned that you two will be getting married soon, and once that happens, she will be the lady of the house. I don't like her. She doesn't even know how to tell a bedtime story when I asked her to put me to bed. Don't let her take over your home, she gazed at him with a cute expression. While she had used the bedtime story excuse to visit her uncle's room tonight, her true intention was to dissuade him from marrying the ghost-like woman she had seen sneaking into the kitchen late at night. Lily held her uncle in high regard and would prefer if he married someone kind and attractive, unlike Linda, whose face was as pale as a ghost from a cartoon she had watched. Despite being a 6-year-old girl, she could recognize a good person when she saw one. Seeing her uncle's disapproving look, she quickly sought to make amends. She retrieved a paper from her teddy bear's pocket and held it up, saying, "If you want to marry a nice woman, choose this one. I like her because she was kind to me and my friends when she visited our school." Intrigued, Liam leaned down to examine the paper she was offering, realizing it was a torn page from a magazine. His eyes landed on Mia Harrison at first, and he chuckled softly at the thought of Neil's reaction if he knew his niece was suggesting he marry his woman. He could already imagine his friend's dark look. However, Lily noticed he was focusing on the wrong woman and scowled. "Stop gazing at my idol. She's not the one I want you to marry. Look at this one." She pointed to the woman standing behind Mia, and upon closer inspection, Liam recognized it was Rain Wallace she was endorsing. "Look at her, she's so pretty and nice. She knows how to tell a story, unlike Miss Linda who looks like a ghost. This lady looks like Marita in Brave. I like her hair so much. Please marry her and let her be the owner of your house. I will never bother you to tell me a bedtime story again. Pretty please." Liam looked down at the girl with a raised eyebrow. He couldn't help but scoff in disbelief. Who told her he was interested in getting married and having a woman run his house and life? Even though he were to do that someday, Rain Wallace was the last woman on earth he'd ever consider, not for any reason but because of her brother, Jason, who'd suddenly decided to befriend his stepbrother to get to him. But knowing how persistent his niece could be, he stroked her hair and said, "All right, only if you agree to go and sleep in your room." Lily didn't have to be told twice. She jumped down the bed in such a hurry she almost fell, but Liam was quick to catch her. "Careful," he warned, but instead she threw herself into his arms and laughed. Thank you, Uncle Liam. I will tell all my friends at school tomorrow that my uncle will marry Auntie Marita." Before Liam could say anything, the girl was out of the room in a blink of an eye. All he heard was the sound of her legs hitting the floor. He shook his head in disbelief, dismissing her words and walking back to his desk to finish his work before he'd get some sleep and wake up at dawn again. Chapter 190, Being Denied Entrance. After the night Mia spoke with Neil on the phone, the next morning she woke up with morning sickness where she couldn't even eat most of her favorite meals without feeling nauseous and terrible. She slept most of the days that came after and only woke up mid-afternoons. One afternoon, she managed to drive to one of the well-known nearby restaurants to get the food she was craving, as she couldn't even stand the aroma of making it herself. Upon entering the restaurant, she noticed a drastic change in the way people treated her. Those who once respected her now avoided her as if she had a contagious disease. They gave her strange looks and made her feel unwelcome. She felt their stares were filled with disdain rather than admiration. Some people whispered and laughed at her, pointing fingers and making her uncomfortable. Unable to eat in the restaurant, she'd resorted to eating in her car. Despite the negative attention, she'd been so hungry she'd overlooked all their disdain and ate her food alone in her car, and once she was done, she drove back home and fell asleep yet again with nothing to worry about but to look forward to the day Neil would be free. She didn't step out of her house again for an entire week after the restaurant incident and remained at home. She'd become lazy lately to the point where all she wanted to do was to sleep, and since not even her manager bothered her with any work-related issues, she didn't bother to check in, as she knew they'd call her if she was being needed. However, as the days passed by, Rain called to inform her about their shopping plans to get the dresses for her father's birthday party. Even though Mia wasn't feeling it, she forced herself to get up and do something productive instead of allowing herself to laze around the house doing nothing but sleeping and feeling depressed occasionally. She'd spoken to Neil again last night and he'd told her he might come back in a few days. He'd told her to watch out for the news about his case, and once it was out, he'd be back. Last night, she had somehow convinced him to be the one to sing for her, and recalling how she had thrown a silly tantrum when he had refused, she smiled to herself. Her fluctuating pregnancy hormones were causing emotional turmoil similar to her menstrual cycles, leading to the natural outburst. She had even shed tears over the phone when he coolly responded, "I don't sing, Carita, go to sleep. Expressing her struggles, she said, I want to sleep, but I can't. My favorite dessert makes me nauseous. I'm only a month and 2 weeks pregnant, but I feel like a mess. I'm dealing with this alone, and now you won't even sing for me. If you won't, I'll end the call and never pick up your calls again. Her resolve prompted him to sing to her until she drifted off to sleep with the phone by her ear. She hadn't intended to burden him, but the desire for his singing had been strong. Despite his imperfect voice, he sang her favorite song with such passion that it felt like a professional performance. His deep, velvety voice was incredibly soothing, lulling her to sleep. However, before she'd succumbed to slumber, she mentioned her shopping plans with Rain for the day, and he insisted she use the black card he'd given her. Mia would have argued if she wasn't so tired, and because she saw nothing wrong in using his card, she would use it to buy herself a dress. And then she'd use her own card to buy him a gift so that when he was back, she would give them to him. Getting him a gift was one of the reasons she was excited to go out to shop with Rain today. She took out one of her comfortable casual attires from the closet and wore them. Then, wearing her thick coat, she picked up her bag and headed out to meet Rain, who was waiting outside in her car. Hey, Rain beamed as Mia got into the car. You're glowing this morning. What's the secret? She joked, starting the car and driving out the iron gate. I don't know. I've been glowing like this for weeks. Mia laughed, fastening her seatbelt and making herself comfortable as they pulled onto the road. She'd also noticed how her skin had started to glow recently, and she thought perhaps it might be her pregnancy or because she'd been happy lately. The pair rode in silence for a moment before Rain broke the silence. Guess what? What? Mia raised a brow, noticing the cheeky smile on her friend's face. With that smile, I'm guessing it's something good, so spill it out. Well, it's good news for me, but I'm not sure about you, Rain beamed. Seeing Mia's curiosity piqued, she continued, last night, Max came to my house with dozens of flowers and chocolates to apologize. He wants us to get back together. Oh my goodness, you should have seen him on his knees, pleading for me to forgive him. Mia frowned. Don't tell me you guys are back together after what he did to you. All right, I won't tell you, Rain said, suppressing her smile. Mia understood immediately that Rain had reunited with Max after he had cheated on her with his secretary in the office and insulted her before everyone in his office. Oh my dear, why would you get back with that jerk after what he did? What if he cheat? He won't, Rain interjected smoothly. He promised not to do it again, Mia. I couldn't bear to see him so filled with regret. He meant it, and I could feel it. We've loved each other for 3 years, and in the past month we've been apart. I haven't experienced true happiness. I'm lost without him. I love him more than you might think, and I'm willing to let go of the past if it doesn't repeat itself. Rain spoke with such passion and love that it left Mia speechless. She added, love is not something one can control. I thought I'd be fine without him in my life, but I was wrong. When I saw him on his knees outside my house, all my resentment towards him disappeared. I remember our time in school. You used to be the hopeless romantic, dreaming of a man who'd bring you flowers and chocolates, who'd give you his coat when it's cold. Secretly, I wanted that too, and I found that man in Maximus Everett. Mia said nothing. She stared at her friend with empathy swelling her heart. She, out of everyone, knew full well how love could be and how you'd never be able to get out of it once you fall into it. She'd loved Neil despite the danger he possessed, and she'd always do no matter what. It would be complete hypocrisy if she tried to talk her friend out of loving the man her heart chose when she also knew no one on earth could talk her out of loving Neil. If Max had promised to change for her sake, then she had no say in this but to support her friend and hope he'd never hurt her like he did the last time. Congratulations then, Mia managed a convincing supportive smile, even though she wasn't completely supportive of them getting back together after what the man had done. Thank you, your support means the world to me. As Rain steered her sleek black car into the grand entrance of the Velvet Labyrinth Mall, the city's most exclusive shopping center meant for the A-list celebrities and influential families, the air hummed with wealth and privilege. Neon lights illuminated the building's facade, casting a mesmerizing glow that beckoned the elites into the giant building. Mia marveled at the wealth surrounding them. Even though she'd been here before, she had never gotten used to its beauty and how huge the space was. Towering glass windows showcased designer boutiques adorned with shimmering displays of haute couture. The marble floors, visible through the glass, gleamed under the soft radiance of crystal chandeliers, and the sound of cascading fountains outside the building echoed through the spacious environment. Their arrival didn't go unnoticed. A valet, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, swiftly approached to take the keys from Rain's grasp, bowing with practiced elegance before disappearing into the labyrinthine parking area. As they made their way through the entrance, passing through the meticulous security check, Mia's excitement to shop for Neil's gift in an expensive place like the Velvet Labyrinth Mall faltered when two imposing figures blocked their path. Dressed in sharp suits, with earpieces firmly in place, they exuded an aura of authority that sent a chill down Mia's spine for some reason, because she'd been here before and not once had the securities stopped her at the entrance until now. With a curt nod, one of the men stepped forward, his expression unreadable behind his dark sunglasses. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he began, his voice low and authoritative, "but it seems there has been a mistake. You are no longer on the list of approved guests for entry into the Velvet Labyrinth." Mia frowned in confusion as she glanced at the two imposing men blocking her path alone. All the times she'd come here in the past, they'd treated her like royalty, and now she was being turned away without explanation. The bustling crowd around them started to turn to see what was going on and who was the intruder who dared enter the mall meant for the elite. The securities never stopped a customer unless it was an intruder. And even Mia struggled to comprehend the sudden change in her status. "There must be some misunderstanding, gentlemen. I'd like to meet your head of security manager," Mia said, trying to act calm even though she was pissed beyond words at the fact that the securities were causing unwanted attention to her. She could see the camera lights going off in the distance, and she didn't have to look to know the paparazzi were in the premises. "There is no misunderstanding, ma'am." Rain, sensing the unwanted attention, stepped forward, her posture poised yet determined. "Surely there must be some misunderstanding," she insisted. "Mia is a valued patron of the Velvet Labyrinth. We demand an explanation for this treatment. Call your manager." The two men exchanged a silent glance before one of them spoke again, his tone unwavering. "I'm afraid our instructions are clear," he replied, his voice betraying no hint of emotion. "Until this matter is resolved, Miss Harrison will not be permitted entry into the mall." With a sinking feeling in her chest, Mia realized that she was facing a barrier she had never encountered before in the halls of the Velvet Labyrinth. First, she'd lost her position, and then she'd been treated strangely at the restaurant and now the mall. All because she'd chosen to break her engagement with Owen Sullivan?